is a shadow of what they used to be. Gone are the cheap, fun sports cars, the rally monsters, the fire breathing, innovative supercar killers. And now, well, what is there? There's the Pajero, which looks like a fridge, the Outlander, which is a fridge, and well, it doesn't have any of the rally DNA of the original Pajero. Outlander, I don't know what to say about that. And my therapist and my lawyer have advised me not to finish this line of thought. Yeah, so let's just harken back to the time when Mitsubishi wanted to make cars than cared about us enthusiasts. The Galant is a car that is always brought up whenever we talk about the Evo. Well, this is my channel, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Let me tell you one thing if you don't know it already. I do not like to talk about famous cars. There was that one time with the Sylvia, but that doesn't count, okay? It was a new channel, I was still figuring things out. Okay, so without further ado, let's talk about the less known and maybe possibly cooler version of the Evo. Well, the brother of the Evo actually, the Mitsubishi Galant. Our story starts in the year 1969 when Mitsubishi unveiled the first gen Galant at the Galant dealership. Yeah, it was called the Galant shop, and hence the name was called Mitsubishi Galant. Also incidentally called the Mitsubishi Colt. Anyways, if you aren't tired of me saying Galant 5 times in a row, I'll say it again. Galant, Galant, and Galant. Okay, so yeah, what happened? Mitsubishi called it the Dynamite design, referring to the aerodynamics used in its silhouette. 3 models were available, powered with a new Saturn engine in 1.3 liter A1 model or 1.5 liter A2 and A3 configurations. 1.4 and 1.6 liter versions called the 14L and 16L were also made, which replaced these previous versions in September 1971. A larger 115 horsepower to 120 horsepower 1.7 liter model for the top GS variant arrived in January of 1973. Initially only available as a 4-door sedan, a 5-door estate, and a 2-door hardtop, also called the A53, the variants were added in 1970. Also, fun fact, the hardtop was the first production passenger car from Mitsubishi, right, with full side windows and no A-pillars. Right, that's very interesting. So, right, in March 1973, with only 2 months of production left, the cleaner MCA2 version of the 1.6 arrived. Chrysler had now partnered up with Mitsubishi, which led to the Dodge Colt, aka Colt Galant. This was also going to be sold under the DSM, Diamond Star Motors, name, which is now famous or infamous for the Eagles, Eagle Talons, what have you. Anyways, by the end of its run, the car had some performance variants, like the GTO and FTO, which produced 100 to 125 horsepower in various engine forms. So, it is now interesting to know that the FTO and GTO did not start in 1990. So, on to the next generation of the Galant. Mitsubishi's second gen Galant, now also called the Colt Galant A110 series, was built from 73 and received a replacement in 76. Introduced on 24th May and sold on 1st June, from 1st June. In the Japanese domestic market, the second generation Galant was even more widely exported as Mitsubishi's ambitions grew again and again. It was sold by Chrysler in many different guises, as the Dodge Colt in the United States, Plymouth Colt, Plymouth Cricket in Canada from 74, the Valiant Galant, the Chrysler Galant, in Australia and Europe as well. Wow, there's so many names. Yeah, so anyways, transmissions were also floor mounted now and included a 4-speed manual and a 5-speed unit for sportier models. A 3-speed automatic transmission was also available, but this is the time when automatics were kind of crap, so we won't talk about it. So this Galant, like the Cosmo we talked about last year, was also inspired by the muscle cars of the early 70s. It looks like a CUDA/Charger, but I won't spend too much time on that. What I will spend time on is the engines. The Astron 80 engines were introduced, having a max of 125 horsepower in 2-liter form. This soldiered on until 1976, where we got the 3rd gen Galant. Now there were the normal variants, but ain't nobody got time for that, so we are going to be skipping straight to some of the cooler variants. First of all, the GS had 115 horsepower and new for the time, the turbocharged Aussie Chrysler Sigma Turbo. Regarded as one of the first turbocharged sedans ever made, this car packed a delicious 125 brumbies. However, that wasn't all. A new experimental Galant was in the works, which was also then released in Japan, having a turbo that unleashed a glorious 145 kisos. So that's cool and all, but it's time to hit a pause on the normal Galant and rewind to the rally history because I didn't cover that until now, which I will cover right now. In 1971, Mitsubishi could switch from the previous Colt and give a fresh breath to its rally efforts. So in 1972, Andrew Cohen, who was later to lead Rally at Europe, was brought in as their top driver with two Galant 16 GLs and two Galant GTO 17Xs being entered. In spite of being plagued by clutch and brake problems, Cohen's Galant 16L GS beat its rival Nissan Fairlady by the Fairlady. Wow, that's very interesting. By a surprising 24 minutes. Victory over Nissan gave Mitsubishi its overall victory in that rally. Right. So that 24-minute time difference is the same time it takes for Casio to finish an entire continent of food. Okay, I don't know why I inserted that joke, but anyways, let's move on. Right, so in 1973, the year the World Rally Championship was created, WRC, the Galant 16L GS became the first Mitsubishi vehicle to participate in WRC. This happened at the Safari Rally where the driver was Joginder Singh, who was competing as a privateer. This part also marked a brief pause of Mitsubishi from using the Galant name in rallying, as they decided to change to the larger at the time. I think it was larger. Yeah, slightly larger at the time, the Lancer 1600 GS. So it is time for us to move back to production car history, where we will undoubtedly find lots of cool tidbits. The year is 1980. Thriller rules the charts, arcades are packed with kids playing pole position, and while Top Gun is still on the runway, Mitsubishi is already dropping turbos like it's cleared for takeoff with the new Galant. Also having the Eterna and Sigma moniker, this Galant brought a cyclone of changes for Mitsubishi. It was quieter, roomier, and boring. Who wants to hear about that? Nope. We are going to be talking about the Sirius engine that was offered in turbocharged form for performance enthusiasts in some markets, with 145 horsepower for Japanese market cars and 156 horsepower for those export markets, which were unencumbered by strict emissions rules. Among other things, a new electronic fuel injection system was introduced on some versions of the Astron engines as well. For economy, an Astron 4D55, the first turbo diesel engine in a Japanese passenger car, was also offered. So now you could roll coal in your turbocharged Japanese mid-size sedan. The two-door coupe was also redesigned for 1980 and sold through 1983, while continuing with the Galant Sigma and Eterna Sigma, a label for the Japanese domestic market or the JDM market. The fourth generation was known as the Mitsubishi Scorpion in Australia, the Dodge Challenger, and the Plymouth Sapporo in the United States. So that was it for the 1988 generation. The fifth generation model, which was also introduced during this time, shifted to a front-wheel drive layout in August of 83 as a four-door sedan and a four-door hardtop with different styling. The design continued the direction with the Tredia, which was albeit more harmonious proportions, having a drag resistance which was down to an average of 0.36 drag coefficient. But since we won't talk about the boring ones, let's get into the hot spicy cars, shall we? A new special Galant was introduced called the Galant 2000 Turbo, packing 150 horsepower, 4 doors, and 9 seconds 0 to 60. This was a quintessential sleeper, providing what was at the time Hellcat power. Though the later made Lotus Carlton would beg to differ, still, it was a quick car with good looks. Over in Japan, Mitsubishi had introduced the Super Exceed sedan, or VR hardtop, and were powered by 147 kilowatt 200 PS, I don't know, change them to Freedom units, okay, and 170 PS, which was the actual one, not 200 PS. Right, turbocharged and intercooled Sirius 3x2 valve engine. This engine switched between using 2 and 3 valves per cylinder to combine high top-end power with low-end drivability. So it was basically VTEC for Mitsubishi. Beginning in October of 1986, Mitsubishi introduced the all-new 2-liter Cyclone V6 engine, which was installed in the Galant Eterna sedans as well as hardtops, shared with the all-new executive limousine, the Debonair. This year also marked Mitsubishi's return to the States with the Galant, and a new taxi variant was also introduced. Sales in the United States began with the 1985 model year, joining the new Mitsubishi dealership network that had already started operations in 1981. The mid-model refresh was offered for 1987, adding redesigned seats and the availability of a 5-speed manual transmission, leather upholstery, and this remained until 1990, while it was sold alongside the 6th generation Galant for some time. While a normal variant was retired in 1989, the widened Australian variant was sold there, as well as the taxi, which was sold well into the 90s alongside the 6th gen until 1999. It was basically the Ford Crown Victoria or the Ford Explorer of Australia if you're American, right? Finally, we come to the most popular and renowned generations of the Galant. The 6th gen was the Galant that became the rally star for Mitsubishi, at least until the Evo happened. In October of 1987, the same platform was used for a 6th generation model which adopted taller and more rounded styling. Mitsubishi's new air suspension, dynamic ECS adaptive air suspension, was the world's first production semi-active electronically controlled suspension system in passenger cars, first made on the 1987 model Galant. In 1991, there was a facelift of the Galant that turned it from the 90s Buick into a refined Japanese saloon. This generation was also sold in Canada as the Dodge 2000 GTX and the Eagle 2000 GTX. And now we come to the Galant AMG. Yes, I did glaze Mercedes in my last history video. What makes you think I won't do it again? With a mildly upgraded engine, producing 168 horsepower and a unique body kit, alloy wheels, and full leather interior, the AMG appearance treatment was achieved on the Debonair for 1986. Along with the Debonair and the Galant, these were the only Japanese cars to receive the AMG treatment. More hot variants were on the line from Mitsubishi, such as the 1.8-liter Viento and the VXS and the VZS variants, which were of 2 liters. And who can forget the venerated VR4, which was also there. Though the specs are difficult to get for the first 3 variants, it is widely considered that they made 170 to 200 horsepower. Along with this, they had some more goodies, such as AC, a dual-tone paint job. And basically they were the Galant VR4, but they were not the Galant VR4. The VR4, however, had another trick up its sleeve, along with 30 more nice, sweet Tocaros, which bumped power up to 230 horses. The Galant VR4 also had a piece resistance, the 4-wheel drive system. So this 4-wheel drive system made it a monster in rallying, and its successor, the Evo, also a monster in rallying. So technically it was an all-wheel drive system, not a 4-wheel drive system, but let me continue on. Between 1988 and 1992, the Galant achieved victories in various rallies from the official factory outfit, that was Mitsubishi Rally Art Europe. It won the 1989 event of the Lakes 1000 Rally, 1000 Lakes Rally, whatever, under the hands of Mikael Eriksson, Pentti Arikala in the 1989 Lombard RAC Rally, won that one, and Kenneth Eriksson, 1991 Swedish Rally. These were all achieved due to both of their, proficiency in rallying and the Galant's very good winning formula. Not limited to this, however, the Galant also was driven to outright victory in the Asia Pacific Rally Championships by Kenjiro Shinozuka in 1988 and Ross Dunkerton from 1991 to 92, and then the American National GT Championship 1992 by Tim O'Neill. However, by 92, the Galant was showing its age in racing and rallying, and it was no longer fit, or neither was it competent, for rallying anymore. So the Evo took over. However, the Galant does not end its story with this, as there are 3 more generations of the Galant. So let's get to them, shall we? A new Galant was debuted in September of 1992 at the Tokyo Motor Show. It was sold in 1994 in the US. Originally only available as a 4-door sedan, a Japan-only hardtop derivative called the Emerald or Emerald, whatever, French for emerald, was also launched in 1992. In October of 1993, Mitsubishi reintroduced their trim, which was the VX, but now it was called the VXR, offering a 2-liter MyVec version of the 6812, a high-revving, naturally aspirated V6 engine with more aggressive tuning. Output was placed at 200 horsepower and 147 pound-feet or 199 newton meters of torque. What's more, this jet had a revised suspension layout from beam axle to multi-leg suspension in the front. For 1992, the emergence of the homologated Lancer Evo meant that the top-spec Galant VR4 was no longer constrained by sporting regulations. Thus, this car became less, hardcore sports rally sedan and a little bit less of it. Well, basically, it changed a little bit. So it had the existing proven four-wheel drive transmission, in keeping with Mitsubishi's reputation for performance-enhancing technology, but the old inline-4 was changed to a smoother twin-turbo V6 of 2-liter size and mated either to a conventional 5-speed manual or a 4-speed Invex autocomplete with fuzzy logic, which allowed the transmission to adapt to the driver's style and road conditions on the floor. I'm guessing this was automatic all-wheel drive, but I really do not know. It's capable of accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour, 97 kilometers per hour if you're, not American, in about 6.5 seconds, and if de-restricted, it could reach about 140 miles per hour. Long story short, it was constrained to the Japanese gentleman's regulations and the motorways, so, it was restricted. So it could reach 140 miles per hour, also which was 230 kilometers per hour. Less powerful models were available in the US, Philippines, and Europe due to emission standards. 1996 heralded the production of a new Galant, which continued till 2006. I won't mention any normal models due to time constraints, but I will talk about the VR4. Mitsubishi opted to further develop the technology in its range-topping VR4, which now was powered by an enlarged 2.5-liter V6 twin-turbo. Having the Invex 2 transmission or a conventional 5-speed manual, this car was limited, as per the Japanese gentleman's agreement, to 276 horsepower. The car was now capable of over 160 miles per hour, 260 km per hour, when de-restricted, and could accelerate from 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds for the 5-speed manual. Some variants, all of the pre-facelift models and the Type S, the facelift model, were fitted with the same advanced active yaw control AYC as the Lancer Evo. And finally, the Galant could be had as a sedan or a station wagon, which is very, very cool. Something not to be missed out. This leads us into the final generation of the Galant. This generation of the Galant, which is the final generation of the Galant, became more cookie cutter with a V6 receiving a bump from 2.5 liter to 3 liter with 190 horsepower and 3.8 liter with a respective 235 horsepower. A Rally Art version joined for 2007, finally upgrading the V6 to a class competitive 258 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Cool. While also adding a firmer suspension, front strut, and so on some suspension parts, okay? However, there was unfortunately no VR4 for this generation, so that was all we got. With some chain styling, the Galant was also introduced in China, USA, Russia, but who cares? From 2005 to 2008, a localized version called the Mitsubishi 380 was manufactured in Australia for the Australian and New Zealand markets. No 4-cylinder engines were available. The 380 was offered with only a 3.8-liter G675 V6 with its 235 horsepower. This replaced the long-lived Magna, where, that's final. So, finally we got a 3.8-liter 6G75, which had 308 horsepower, ending the Galant saga once and for all. Thank you, have a great day, and remember, as always, I'm just Cornered, and goodbye.